The Zikar Dominion, a fierce and ancient alien empire, had been expanding across the galaxy with unstoppable force. Their fleets moved like shadows, sweeping from one star system to the next, crushing every species in their path. No one could stand against them. Human colonies in the outer rim of the galaxy had already fallen, their people lost in a cold silence. But it was the fall of Earth's first defense line that shattered the hope of survival for all humanity. On Earth, panic spread across the governments. The war with the Zikar had started with skirmishes and minor engagements, but no one had anticipated the sudden, all-out invasion. They thought the alien threat could be contained with Earth's powerful fleet and advanced weapons. But the Zikar were different. Their technology was leagues beyond human capabilities, and their military tactics were ruthless and efficient. In just weeks, the aliens had crippled Earth's defenses, leaving humanity exposed to their wrath. The United Nations held an emergency meeting, its members huddled in fear and disbelief. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with desperation. Earth had always been a symbol of strength and unity in the galaxy, but now it was on the verge of extinction. "We need to send a distress signal," Admiral Vera Tran said, her voice cold but steady. She was the highest-ranking officer of Earth's defense forces, and the weight of humanity's fate rested on her shoulders. "Our forces are nearly wiped out. If we don't call for help, we'll be completely overwhelmed." The Council murmured in agreement. A call for help was their only option now. But who would come? Earth was alone in this fight, with only its scattered fleets and colonies left to fend off the invaders. "No one's going to come," General David Hunt, the head of Earth's Strategic Command, interjected. His expression was grim. "The Galactic Council has always been indifferent to us. We've seen it before. They'll do nothing." Admiral Tran stood, her mind racing. She had always believed in the power of diplomacy, in the hope that the galaxy would come together to fight threats like the Zikar. But the Council's apathy had already doomed many worlds. This time, Earth had to rely on its own strength. "If we don't make a stand," she said, her voice growing louder, "then humanity will fall. This is our last chance to survive." The Council members fell silent, weighed down by the harsh reality. For the first time in history, Earth was not leading the charge. It was begging for help. Outside the chambers, the vast expanse of Earth's cities seemed peaceful, unaware of the impending destruction. The streets of New York, London, and Tokyo were crowded as always, but there was an underlying tension in the air. People were preparing for the worst, buying supplies, packing up their families, and saying goodbye to loved ones. Governments began to evacuate civilians from the outer colonies, but there wasn't enough time. The Zikar were too fast, their ships already appearing at the edge of Earth's space, ready to deliver the final blow. In the darkened halls of Earth's communications tower, the team worked tirelessly to send out the distress signal. It was their last hope. The signal would be broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every corner of the universe. But as the team worked, they knew the odds of receiving help were slim. The Zikar had been conquering for centuries, and many species had already fallen under their rule. The Galactic Council, if they even received the signal, had already shown their disregard for Earth's survival. Sitting in a dimly lit room, Lieutenant Maya Clark, a young officer tasked with monitoring the signal, stared at the screens. Her heart raced as the moment of truth drew closer. She could hear the sound of her own breath, shallow and quick. The pressure was overwhelming. If the signal failed, there was nothing more they could do. "I'm sending it," Maya said, her voice barely audible. She pressed the button that would launch the transmission across the galaxy. The hum of the console echoed through the room, and the blinking lights seemed to slow down. Every second felt like an eternity. She glanced at the empty chair beside her, where her partner, Lieutenant Alex Chen, had once sat. He had been one of the first to go in the Zikar attack, a victim of the aliens' overwhelming firepower. Alex had always believed that humanity would survive, that Earth's people were too strong to fall. Maya, however, wasn't so sure. The Zikar had no mercy, and she couldn't ignore the fear growing in her chest. "I hope someone hears us," Maya whispered, her fingers trembling as she watched the signal pulse outward, traveling into the void of space. Back in the United Nations chambers, the silence was suffocating. The distress signal had been sent, and now humanity could only wait. The decision was made. Earth was out of options, and the generals prepared to make their final stand. General Hunt's voice broke the stillness. "We've done all we can. Now we wait for the inevitable. The Zakar will be here soon." The council members exchanged looks, knowing the reality was setting in. Earth's fate lay in the hands of those far beyond their borders. The hope that someone, anyone, might respond to the signal was all they had left. Admiral Tran stood at the front of the room, looking out of the windows at the bright blue Earth below. The planet had always been a symbol of life, prosperity, and unity. But now it was a target. The Zakar would strike soon, and nothing would stand in their way. She clenched her fist and stared out into the distance, her mind swirling with thoughts of all she had lost. The memories of the people who had died in battle, the families torn apart by the war, and the countless lives that had already been extinguished by the Zakar. It was all too much. But there was no time to dwell on it. Humanity had to fight. They had to prove to the galaxy that they were not weak, that they could stand tall against the worst the universe could throw at them. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice on the intercom. "Admiral Tran," came the voice of the communications officer. "The signal. It's received a response." The room fell silent as every eye turned to her. "What kind of response?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "We're not sure, Admiral," the officer replied, "but it's coming from a ship, a human ship." The council gasped in unison. It was impossible. Earth's fleet had been decimated, and every known human ship was either destroyed or in retreat. The officer continued, his voice now filled with urgency. "Admiral, you need to hear this for yourself." Admiral Tran rushed to the communication panel, her heart pounding in her chest. The screen flickered as a message appeared. It was short, but powerful. "This is the UNS Liberty. We heard your call. We're on our way." For the first time in what felt like forever, a wave of hope washed over her. The UNS Liberty, Earth's last remaining warship, was coming, and with it, humanity's final chance. This was the moment that would define them. The time for desperation was over. The fight for Earth's survival had begun. This part is designed to set the tone for the rest of the story, focusing on Earth's desperate situation, the sending of the distress signal, and the first signs of hope as a human warship responds. The massive halls of the Galactic Council echoed with the murmurs of its representatives. The Council, a body of leaders from countless planets and species across the galaxy, was supposed to uphold peace and cooperation among the stars. But as the crisis on Earth grew more dire, the Council seemed more focused on their own political struggles than the fate of one small planet. In a chamber filled with polished metal walls and floating screens displaying the Council's emblem, the voices of the representatives rose in argument. Each species, each race represented their own interests far removed from the struggles of a single planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. They bickered, they debated, and yet, the problem on Earth seemed distant to them. To most, it was just another conflict in the endless cycles of war that filled the history of the galaxy. Admiral Vera Tran watched the debate from Earth's designated seat, her hands clenched into fists. She had spent her entire life believing in the promise of galactic unity. But now, sitting here, watching the Council dismiss Earth's desperate situation, the ideals she had once held dear seemed hollow and unimportant. Her eyes scanned the screen in front of her, where Counselor Zorath from the Madari system was speaking. "We cannot risk our own stability for the fate of a single planet." Zorath's voice boomed. His alien features, a mass of shifting light and energy, flickered on the screen as he spoke. "Earth is far from the center of galactic affairs. Let them fight their own battle." Admiral Tran's jaw tightened. She had heard these arguments before. Selfishness masked as diplomacy. The Madari were known for their neutrality, but it was their own political gain they cared about, not the survival of weaker species like humans. "This is not just Earth's battle," she said, her voice cutting through the debate like a blade. The Zakar Dominion is expanding. If they are allowed to wipe out humanity, nothing will stop them from turning on the rest of you. You've seen their destruction across the stars. Don't pretend it won't come for you next. A ripple of tension passed through the room. Representatives of various species exchanged uneasy glances. But no one spoke. No one moved to support Earth. Another screen flickered, and the image of Counselor Fira, a tall and elegant alien from the Aurelian system, appeared. Her sharp, angular features were framed by the pale blue light of her home world. She, too, was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Admiral," she began, her voice slow and measured, "we sympathize with Earth's situation, but we cannot afford to intervene. The Zikar are ruthless, and their reach is growing. To engage them would mean war on a galactic scale. It's not in the Council's interest to provoke them further." Admiral Tran's heart sank. She had expected this response, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. The Council was nothing but a collection of politicians more concerned with their own safety than with the fate of an entire species. The weight of that reality felt crushing. But what of the Council's role? Admiral Tran shot back, her voice rising. Are we not supposed to defend peace? To protect those who cannot protect themselves? Or is that only for the favored members? The ones who can afford to sit back and watch the rest of us burn? Silence filled the chamber. For a brief moment, even the most indifferent members of the Council seemed taken aback. But the silence didn't last long. Counselor Zorath's voice returned, cutting through the tension. Your passionate speech changes nothing. The Council has spoken. There will be no aid for Earth. We suggest you look to your own military resources. Admiral Tran fought to control her breathing, her hands shaking. She had thought she could reason with the Council, appeal to their sense of duty. But it was clear now. Earth's fate meant nothing to them. A sharp beeping noise interrupted the meeting. Everyone turned toward the source, surprised by the sudden urgency. Admiral, we've just received an incoming transmission, the communications officer reported. It's a response to Earth's distress signal. A murmur of interest rippled through the room. Everyone's eyes turned to the screen, eager to see who, if anyone, would answer humanity's desperate plea. On the screen, the image of an older, grizzled man appeared. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his uniform was simple but worn. The insignia of Earth's military shone on his chest. His eyes were filled with determination, and there was a calmness to his demeanor, but his presence was electric. This is Captain Elias Harding of the UNS Liberty, he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. We've received your distress signal. We're on our way. For a moment, no one spoke. The room was silent as the implications of the message sank in. Earth's last remaining warship, the UNS Liberty, was coming. A glimmer of hope had arrived. Admiral Tran's heart skipped a beat. She had feared the Liberty was lost, one of the many ships that had been destroyed in the early waves of the Zikar invasion. But now here it was, responding to her call against all odds. Captain Harding, Admiral Tran began, her voice full of disbelief. Are you saying you're coming to Earth's aid? I am, Captain Harding replied firmly. We're taking a route that will have us arrive within the next few days. We'll have limited support, but we'll make it count. Admiral Tran's mind raced. The Liberty was Earth's last hope, its powerful arsenal of weapons capable of turning the tide in a fight against the Zakar. It was their final chance to push back the alien invaders. But that hope was fragile. The Liberty was only one ship. Would it be enough? Thank you, Captain, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You've given us hope when we had none left. The transmission ended, and the room fell silent once more. Well, that's something, Counselor Fira remarked, her tone cold. But we cannot risk galactic peace on the actions of a single ship. It is unfortunate, but Earth will have to fight its own battle. The words stung, but Admiral Tran refused to let them show. Earth had been abandoned by the Council, but it would not be abandoned by its own people. The Liberty was coming, and that was enough. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Tran remained in the chamber, alone with her thoughts. The Council's indifference was nothing new, but it still cut deep. Earth had always been a loyal member of the galactic community, yet in its darkest hour it stood alone. Her hands trembled as she reached for her comlink and sent a message to the UNS Liberty. The message was simple, filled with the resolve that had carried humanity this far. "We will hold out, Captain, until you arrive we fight." The battle for Earth was far from over, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Admiral Tran felt a spark of hope. Humanity had a chance, and with the Liberty on its way, that chance would not be wasted. This part highlights the Galactic Council's indifference to Earth's plight and the moment when hope is rekindled with the response from UNS Liberty. The stakes are raised as Earth must now rely on its own strength and the arrival of the Liberty to face the overwhelming Sekar Dominion Pomini. Earth's survival hung in the balance as Admiral Vera Tran paced back and forth in the command center. She had just received the transmission from Captain Harding of the UNS Liberty. The ship was coming, but it would not arrive for days. The Sekar Dominion, however, was already on Earth's doorstep. Every minute spent waiting was a minute closer to total destruction. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. Earth's forces had already suffered devastating losses. With no other allies to call upon and the Galactic Council's refusal to intervene, it became clear, if humanity was to survive, it had to rely on itself. In the dimly lit war room, Admiral Tran addressed the leaders of Earth's military. "We have one option left," she said, her voice filled with determination. "The Earth Arsenal. It's time to unleash everything we have." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the significance of her words. The Earth Arsenal was a collection of weapons that had been hidden deep beneath the planet's surface for centuries. They were designed for times of absolute desperation, when no other options remained. Humanity had never planned to use them. Until now. "Activate the arsenal," Admiral Tran ordered. "Prepare for battle." In a hidden facility located deep within the Earth's crust, a massive underground chamber lay dormant. This was the site of the Earth Arsenal, a system of weapons that had been built during the early days of humanity's space exploration. Their purpose had been to safeguard Earth in case of an all-out war, with an enemy of unimaginable power. That time had arrived. The arsenal, a network of advanced technologies and weapon systems, had been sealed for years, forgotten by most. But now, it hummed to life. Beneath the surface, automated systems began to activate. Giant doors that had been sealed for generations opened with a deep rumbling sound, revealing weapons that were far beyond anything the Earth's current military had at its disposal. The ground shook as enormous launchers, hidden deep underground, shifted into position. A massive energy pulse filled the air, the weaponry charging with deadly potential. In a command center far above the surface, Lieutenant Maya Clark monitored the process. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, her heart racing as the final stages of activation unfolded. "System ready," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "Weapons online." Admiral Tran, who had been watching from above, took a deep breath. The Earth Arsenal had been a last resort, a tool of destruction that no one wanted to use. But with the Sekar closing in, humanity had no choice. "Launch the first wave," Admiral Tran ordered. Her voice was firm, resolute. There was no turning back now. Above Earth's atmosphere, the Sekar fleet loomed. Hundreds of enormous warships, each capable of devastating entire cities, hovered in orbit. Their sleek, dark designs were terrifying, their weapons primed to obliterate any resistance. The Sekar had been conquering worlds for centuries, and they had no plans of stopping. Earth's resistance had been fierce, but now it was outnumbered and outmatched. Captain Harding and the crew of the UNS Liberty were still several days away, and Earth's defenses were stretched thin. But the Earth Arsenal was their trump card. Chudder. First weapons launched with a deafening roar, breaking through Earth's atmosphere and hurtling into space. Massive energy pulses, concentrated into precise beams, shot into the vastness of the sky. The Sekar ships had not anticipated such a powerful response. They had underestimated the tenacity of humanity. One by one, the Earth Arsenal's weapons activated, each unleashing a wave of unimaginable destruction. The first volley struck the Zakar fleet with incredible force. Explosions tore through the alien warships, their hulls disintegrating under the intense energy pulses. For a moment it seemed as though Earth had a fighting chance. But the Zakar were not easily defeated. Their ships retaliated almost immediately, their weapons unleashing blasts of destructive energy. Earth's forces could only watch as the Zakar's return fire lit up the sky, each shot hitting its target with deadly accuracy. "We're holding them off, but we're not winning yet," Lieutenant Clark reported from the control center. "The Arsenal's weapons are powerful, but they're not invincible." Admiral Tran stared at the holographic display in front of her. She had always known the Zakar were a force to be reckoned with, but seeing their power firsthand was sobering. Humanity was fighting for its very existence, but the Zakar seemed relentless. "We need more," Admiral Tran said quietly. "Activate the secondary weapons." With her command, the Earth Arsenal unleashed its second wave. This time, the weapons were more advanced, biological warheads designed to target specific alien technologies and disrupt their systems. The Zakar ships began to flicker and stutter, their once dominant energy systems beginning to fail. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give Earth's forces a fighting chance. The Zakar fleet, now taking damage, retaliated with renewed fury. They had underestimated humanity before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Their ships launched missiles, each one aimed at Earth's defenses, seeking to obliterate humanity's last line of resistance. "This isn't enough," Admiral Tran muttered, her mind racing. "We need to take the fight to them." As the battle raged on, Earth's forces dug in. The Zakar were not going to give up easily, and neither would humanity. The Earth Arsenal had given them hope, but it was clear that the alien fleet would not be defeated with conventional weapons alone. Humanity had to be resourceful, cunning, and relentless. Lieutenant Clark's voice came through the comms again. "Admiral, the Liberty has entered Earth's orbit. It's here." A surge of relief washed over Admiral Tran. The UNS Liberty was the final piece of the puzzle. The human warship was armed with technology that rivaled the Earth Arsenal, and its crew was battle-hardened and ready for the fight of their lives. "We hold them off as long as we can," Admiral Tran said. "The Liberty is our last hope. We have to give them time to get here." The human forces, bolstered by the Earth Arsenal's firepower and the arrival of the Liberty, pressed the attack. Earth had become a battleground, a place where every inch of ground, every second of time, was fought for with unyielding determination. The Zakar, stunned by the unexpected strength of humanity's weapons, were forced to rethink their strategy. The battle was far from over, but Earth had proven that it would not go down without a fight. In the command center, Admiral Tran stood tall, her eyes fixed on the screens. The Earth Arsenal had given humanity a fighting chance, but the real test would come with the arrival of the Liberty. Earth was on the edge of destruction, but for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity was ready to fight, to survive, and to prove that it would not be wiped out by the Zakar. "We're not done yet," she said, her voice unwavering. "We're just getting started." This part emphasizes the activation of Earth's secret arsenal, showing how humanity begins to fight back against the overwhelming Zakar dominion. The Earth Arsenal's power provides a brief moment of hope, but the Zakar remain a formidable enemy. The arrival of the Liberty will be the turning point in the battle for Earth's survival. The air around Earth crackled with energy as the battle raged on in space. The Zakar dominion had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Earth's defenses, bolstered by the devastating firepower of the Earth Arsenal, had created a momentary shift in the balance of power. But despite the fierce resistance, the alien fleet was relentless, pushing forward with a speed and aggression that left Earth's forces struggling to keep up. On the ground, the streets of Earth's cities were eerily quiet. People who had once walked casually through the crowded streets now huddled in their homes, glued to screens, watching the destruction unfolding in real time. Every corner of the planet, from the bustling metropolis of New York to the quiet hills of rural Africa, was holding its breath. In the command center, deep within the Earth's military headquarters, Admiral Vera Tran stood at the forefront, her eyes glued to the holographic display that showed the ongoing space battle. The Z-Car fleet had pulled back, but it was clear they weren't finished yet. The aliens were regrouping, preparing for their next strike. Earth's defenses, already stretched thin, could only hold out for so long. "Admiral, we've just received another report from the Liberty," Lieutenant Maya Clark said, her voice urgent. "They're almost in position, but they're encountering some resistance from the Z-Car fleet. They'll need a few more hours to reach our orbital defenses." Admiral Tran felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. They had so little time. The Z-Car fleet was relentless, and Earth's forces were running out of options. Even with the Earth arsenal's power, the Z-Car had only been pushed back temporarily. If they didn't make a decisive move soon, the aliens would break through. "We need to buy them time," Admiral Tran said, her mind racing. "Deploy all remaining human fighters. We'll give the Liberty a clear path to Earth. We can't let the Z-Car break through our defenses now." The orders were given, and Earth's remaining military forces scrambled into action. The last line of defense, a mix of human pilots, soldiers, and engineers, quickly assembled to hold the line against the incoming alien fleet. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had no choice. They had to fight. In the cold silence of space, the human fighters darted through the shadows of Earth's atmosphere, their engines humming with a steady rhythm. The Z-Car ships loomed above them, massive structures brimming with weapons capable of obliterating whole cities. But humanity's fighters were quick and nimble, darting between the alien warships, firing their weapons with precision and speed. The battle was chaotic. Explosions filled the black sky, and the sound of energy blasts echoed across the battlefield. The human pilots fought with everything they had, knowing that Earth's fate rested on their shoulders. Each shot fired was a life spared, each missile launched a chance for survival. "Lock on target," a pilot shouted through his comms, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "Firing now." A series of bright flashes filled the screen as the fighters' missiles hit their target, detonating in a burst of light that took down one of the Z-Car ships. The pilot's face broke into a grin as the alien ship exploded into debris. But there was no time for celebration. More Z-Car warships appeared in the distance, and the battle was far from over. Back in the command center, Admiral Tran watched the fight unfold on the screen. She could feel the weight of each passing second, knowing that Earth's resistance was beginning to falter. The Liberty had not yet arrived, and every moment of delay was another moment that the Z-Car could use to break through their defenses. "Status report," she demanded, turning to her communications officer. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Eastern Defense Grid," the officer replied. "The Z-Car have breached the outer perimeter. They're heading for the city centers." "Damn it," Admiral Tran muttered under her breath. "Hold them off for as long as you can. We're not giving up Earth without a fight." She turned, back to the tactical display, where Earth's forces continued to hold their ground, but it was clear they were losing the edge. The Z-Car were too powerful, and humanity's resources were dwindling. "Admiral, the Liberty is making its final approach," Lieutenant Clark said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and worry. "They'll be in range in just under an hour." Admiral Tran nodded, her expression hardening. "We hold them off until then. Earth isn't going down today." On the bridge of the UNS Liberty, Captain Elias Harding stood tall, staring out at the swirling chaos of battle. His ship, a massive behemoth compared to the human fighters, had finally made its way through the last of the Z-Car fleet. But the aliens were relentless. Even though the Liberty was one of the most advanced warships ever built, it wasn't invincible. "Status on weapons, Lieutenant?" Harding asked, his voice calm, but the tension in his eyes was obvious. "Weapons are online, Captain," the officer responded. "We're ready to engage." "Prepare the main cannon," Harding ordered. "We'll make our mark, but we're not going to get another shot at this. Once we break through, we need to finish the job." Harding's hands tightened around the arms of his chair. He had been in many battles before, but this one felt different. The weight of humanity's survival rested on his shoulders. He had to succeed. There was no alternative. As the Liberty prepared to enter the fray, the final hour arrived. Earth's defenses were faltering, and the Z-Car were close to breaking through. The alien ships, more massive and deadly than anything humanity had ever faced, continued their relentless assault, firing wave after wave of powerful blasts. Earth's remaining fighters did their best to block the enemy, but the Zakar were overwhelming. The planet's skies darkened as the final wave of human fighters moved into position. The Liberty, now within range, fired its massive weapons, sending energy beams streaking toward the heart of the Zakar fleet. The first shot hit its target, destroying one of the Zakar capital ships in an instant. The Liberty's second shot followed, and another Zakar ship disintegrated in a fiery explosion. For the first time in days, Earth's forces felt a glimmer of hope. The Liberty had arrived. "Keep pushing forward," Captain Harding shouted as the crew prepared for the next strike. "We take back our planet today." The battle was far from over, but Earth had made its stand. With the Liberty on their side and the will to survive, humanity was ready to fight back with everything they had. Back on Earth, the people who had watched in fear now began to feel a flicker of hope. The sight of the Zakar fleet being pushed back was a signal that the tides of war might be changing. But it wasn't over. The fight for survival would continue, and Earth would need all the strength, courage, and resolve it could muster to win. Admiral Tran, watching from the command center, knew that the coming hours would decide everything. The Liberty had given them a fighting chance, but the final victory was far from certain. The question remained, would humanity survive this final test, or would the Zakar's power prove too great? Earth's fate rested on their shoulders. They were fighting for their survival, for their future, and for their place in the stars. "We'll survive," Admiral Tran whispered to herself, her voice filled with a quiet, unshakable determination. "We will survive." This part of the story emphasizes the desperate fight for Earth's survival, as humanity's forces struggled to hold back the overwhelming Zakar fleet. The arrival of the UNS Liberty offers a glimmer of hope, but the battle is far from over. The fate of Earth is still uncertain, but humanity's resilience and determination are their greatest weapons. The battle for Earth reached a critical point. The Zakar Dominion, which had advanced with brutal efficiency, began to feel the strain of humanity's unexpected resistance. Earth's forces had been pushed to the brink, their numbers dwindling. But with the arrival of the UNS Liberty, the tide of the war was finally beginning to shift. Admiral Vera Tran stood at the front of the command center, watching the massive holographic display showing the status of the battle. The once overwhelming Zakar fleet now appeared to falter. Alien warships, which had been effortlessly cutting through Earth's defenses, were now retreating under the force of the Liberty's cannon fire. Captain Harding's leadership had proven invaluable, and the ship's advanced weaponry was causing chaos in the Zakar ranks. "We've gained ground, Admiral," Lieutenant Maya Clark reported, her voice filled with hope. "The Liberty is taking down their flagship. The Zakar are in disarray." For the first time in days, Admiral Tran allowed herself a small breath of relief. The Liberty's weapons were cutting through the Zakar fleet like a hot knife through butter, but it wasn't over yet. They were still far from victory. "We can't stop now," Admiral Tran said, her voice steady and full of resolve. "We've bought ourselves time, but they'll regroup. Keep up the pressure." Maya nodded. "Understood, Admiral." In space, the battle raged on. The UNS Liberty fired once more, its enormous cannon sending another powerful beam across the sky, hitting one of the Zakar destroyers. The ship exploded in a flash of light, sending debris scattering in all directions. But even as the human ship gained ground, the Zakar weren't backing down easily. A new wave of Zakar ships appeared on the radar. These ships were larger, more heavily armored and armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire cities with a single blast. Earth's forces, though bolstered by the Liberty, were not prepared for this new threat. "We've got more incoming," Lieutenant Clark said, her voice tense. "The Zakar have called in reinforcements. It's going to get worse." Admiral Tran's face tightened. "We can't let them get close to Earth. Open fire with everything we have." Human fighters and the Liberty's remaining batteries aimed at the incoming ships. The air was filled with flashes of light as the battle escalated. For a brief moment, humanity's fighters seemed to have the upper hand. Z-car ships exploded, their forms disintegrating in flashes of light, but the new reinforcements were overwhelming. The Z-car were using every advantage they had: speed, numbers, and advanced technology. On the bridge of the UNS Liberty, Captain Harding stared at the tactical display, his jaw clenched. The incoming Z-car ships were formidable, but he wasn't ready to give up just yet. Earth's people had shown their strength, and now it was his turn to push back. "Captain, the Z-car reinforcements are taking heavy damage, but they're still coming," his communications officer reported. "We're holding our ground, but it's only a matter of time before they break through." Harding stood tall, a calm yet intense look on his face. "Then we push back harder," he said firmly. "Bring the secondary cannons online. Focus on their lead ships." The Liberty's secondary weapons powered up. Large energy beams shot from its side, striking the incoming Z-car ships with devastating force. Each shot was calculated, precise, and aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. The Liberty was showing no mercy, but even with the Liberty's firepower and Earth's fighters pushing forward, the Z-car fleet refused to back down. More ships continued to emerge, overwhelming the human forces. The Z-car were relentless, and they had no intention of retreating. "Captain," shouted his tactical officer, "we've lost contact with several of our fighter squads. The Z-car have begun using cloaking technology. We can't track them anymore." "Damn it," Harding muttered under his breath. "We'll have to fight blind. Stay sharp, everyone." Back on Earth, the civilian population watched in stunned silence. News broadcasts showed the ongoing battle in space, the flashes of explosions lighting up the sky. Every living room, every household was glued to the screen, their hearts racing with the hope that humanity might actually survive this war. In a small town on the outskirts of Tokyo, a young mother watched the news with her child. Her hands shook as she clutched her son tightly. "Mom," the child asked, his voice filled with fear, "are we going to be okay?" The woman looked at her son, trying to hold back her tears. "Yes," she whispered. "We will be okay. Earth will fight. We will survive." Her voice, though shaky, was filled with the same determination that had kept humanity alive through the darkest of times. The world was standing still, waiting for Earth's forces to pull through. The fate of everyone on the planet rested on the shoulders of the brave men and women fighting above. The Liberty fired again, this time with a larger blast that rocked the enemy fleet. One of the Z-car's largest warships crumpled under the attack, its massive form breaking apart in space. The crew of the Liberty cheered in victory, but the battle was far from won. Admiral Tran's voice came over the comms, her tone commanding and steady. "Captain Harding, we need you to punch through their lines, get to their command ship. If we can take down their leader, we can disrupt their forces." Captain Harding nodded, his jaw set in determination. "Understood, Admiral. We're going." For the heart of their fleet. With a powerful burst of speed, the Liberty broke through the Z-car's outer defense line. As it moved closer to the command ship, the Z-car fleet closed in, surrounding them. Every weapon on the ship fired, tearing through the approaching enemy ships. The Liberty was now in the thick of the fight. The Z-car fleet surrounded them on all sides, and the human ship was taking heavy damage. But Captain Harding's resolve was unshaken. "We're almost there," Harding said, his eyes fixed on the command ship in the distance. "Just a little longer." With one final push, the Liberty broke through the Z-car defenses and unleashed a devastating blow on their command ship. The alien vessel shattered in a massive explosion, sending debris flying in all directions. The remaining Z-car forces hesitated, their coordination falling apart as their leader was wiped out. In the command center on Earth, Admiral Tran watched the Z-car fleet begin to falter. The human forces, exhausted and battered, had just dealt a decisive blow to their enemy. It wasn't over yet, but the turning point had come. "Report," Admiral Tran said, her voice calm but urgent. "The Z-car forces are disorganized," Lieutenant Clark replied. "Many of their ships are retreating. We've gained the upper hand." Admiral Tran allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The war was not over, but humanity had turned the tide. Against all odds, they had fought back. The Zikar fleet was in retreat, and Earth had made its stand. The battle was far from finished, but Earth had proven that it would not be defeated. This part of the story shows the resilience and determination of Earth's forces as the battle against the overwhelming Zikar fleet reaches a critical turning point. With the Liberty's help and humanity's unwavering resolve, they have finally begun to push back the Zikar and gain a moment of hope. But the war is far from over, and the final victory is still uncertain. Tomini.